So the last, I guess it's been about 3 weeks, maybe like 4 weeks now. I think it's been like a whole month that I've been working on this new physics system. And I totally thought it was just going to take like 1 week to make this. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. But man, I've just gone down a rabbit hole of trying to improve the physics and just making little changes to try to make it better. It all started off with a comment on Discord talking about how maybe something about the movement might be what's causing the fact that sometimes the collision detection fails and the player moves outside of a wall when like going at high speed through a tunnel or something along those lines. And I thought, oh, like if I change this little bit in the code, maybe I can fix that. So I started working on that. And the more and more I worked on it, the more messy it got. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to just wipe everything that I did with the physics and just start over from scratch. Take everything that I learned making the physics for Jet Island so far and just remove that block of code from the game and replace it with new code. So it's not like I completely changed everything in the game, just like this like big messy section of code where I took all of that, commented it out, which means to temporarily get rid of that code, make it not work anymore. So that then I could bring in some new code and put it in chunks and make it more modular and make it easier for me to work on. And it was going really, really good for the first, like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks that I've been working on this. I'll show you in a second. I have a whiteboard over here that I've just covered with ideas and equations for how to try to make the physics work. And I was really putting off making this video because I wanted to get it perfect before showing it off, but it's just not to that point yet. I guess I might as well just show you how it's coming along so far and talk about some of my ideas. And yeah, I don't know. I gotta wrap this up, and I guess I don't know. I gotten to the point where I need to like take a step back and rethink what I'm doing and go back at it with a clear head, or I don't know, something like that. It's been really challenging. All right, so there are a bunch of ideas scattered all over this board. I think let me draw a line here. I think everything from here over is the whole system I came up with to try to figure out if a point that we've collided with is inside of the player body. Now, the thing about in Jet Island is you can be moving upwards of like 2,000 miles per hour, so you can just move extremely fast. So in other video games, the way it normally works is the player moves step by step. So if you take the default rigid body inside of Unity, that's how it works. It always moves step by step. So if you're moving ridiculously fast and it moves through a wall or something, it won't detect it because the steps are too far apart. So you can't have an object go too fast. Otherwise, it'll go through other objects. So that's why I needed to create my own custom physics system. So in the game, it's constantly shooting out what's called a ray cast. So it's kind of like a laser pointer that just like points at something and determines whether or not there's a wall there. And if that laser pointer hits a wall, it returns us a point to tell us where in 3D space that laser pointer hit something. So in the code, once I find out that the laser pointer or the raycast has hit something, I need to determine if that point is inside of, not only inside of the player body, but inside of the player body where we're going to be over the course of the next frame. So that's why I've created this stretched character capsule, I guess is what we can call it. But basically, this is the head, the feet, and then where the head is going to be the next frame and where the feet are going to be the next frame. And I've broken all of this up into parts, and I can test each of the parts individually to find out if that point is going to be inside of our body. There we go. All of this, this area that I just circled here, that is the new ray casting pattern that I made. So first I made all of this because I was able to kind of shoehorn this into the existing system and it was kind of working, but there was more things I needed to change, and that was the point when I realized that I need to redo everything, not just finding out if the point is inside of the body, but I need to actually change the pattern of how we shoot our raycasts out. So that's what all of this is. And this is a little less complicated. It's more like me just kind of deciding what would be the most efficient pattern of shooting out raycasts and what are all of the variables I'm going to need to adjust how many raycasts are shooting out. So I kind of divided it up into 3 sections, and it's actually really cool inside of the code. I'll show you on the computer, and maybe I can throw up a video on the screen showing kind of what this looks like in action. Oh yeah, so basically, since I have each of these functions isolated into their own function that I can call from any point inside of the code, I'm able to reuse those in different locations to have the code be a lot more flexible and a lot easier to edit and change things. And that's part of the reason why I really wanted to redo all of this code, was just to make everything easier to work with for me when I'm writing code. In gameplay, it's going to feel mostly the same. My hope is that the game feels just a little bit more solid. Like when you hit a wall, it'll feel just a little bit more solid than it did before. Like it felt solid before, but I'm hoping that it just feels just a little bit more right. But it'll be a very, very subtle difference. The biggest difference is going to be for me, so that I can edit the game more going forward, and hopefully also use this code in future games, because I think once I work the bugs out, this is going to be a super flexible system and just a really good base to build any kind of gameplay around. So I'm really excited about what I can do with this in the future, more than I really am about what it's going to do to Jet Island right now. Hopefully once I get it done, it's just going to fix a couple of glitches that were in the game before, but going forward in the future, I think there's going to be a lot of possibilities. Okay, and to wrap up, we have this little section up here. This is the latest thing that I've been working on. So basically, if our player has a stretched body and we're flying down at the ground and we're limiting our movement against surfaces that we hit, if our body is stretched and it's like where we're going to be during the next frame, we could hit a wall earlier than we actually hit a wall. So it gets really, really close, but sometimes it's almost like this like stair step effect. So if you like are flying down at the ground really fast, it checks ahead too fast and it thinks you hit the ground before you actually did hit the ground. So my idea was to move the player down to the surface of what we actually hit and use similar trigonometry stuff like this to make sure the player gets exactly onto the surface of what we hit, and then apply the leftover movement. Because in video games, we always move frame by frame, but in real life, it doesn't happen like that. Everything is just one smooth, continuous motion. So I figured I can write some equations and use some trigonometry to figure out what would have happened in between the frames, so I can just make that happen and make the game feel a lot more real and solid, so that even though the game's running at like 90 frames per second, the little bit in between the frames works out as it would in real life. So basically, I want to make it so we move down to the surface, calculate how much that would be, and then whatever's left over, move. So if I'm going down here and I hit the ground, and like I have a little sliding movement left over. So I'm talking about frame to frame. If we're moving like 1,000 miles per hour, hitting the ground and moving forward. So I calculate how far we move here, how far we would have moved. So that's what all of this is. So the circle is where we are this frame. This red dot is where, or wait, no. First this little blue dot is the exact point ahead of us. That's like on the surface. Then we got to move that out a little bit to see where we would have hit, and then we measure this distance, and then we can basically kind of use this like triangle, like, so this is where like this purple dotted line circle is how the game worked before I added this in. So we'd like move that way before we actually hit it. So we move to the surface, And then I figured out that basically I kind of measured this triangle to make sure it was like linear. So I don't know, this is like a whole work in progress, but it's supposed to figure out where our leftover momentum would take us in between frames. Okay, so that was a ton of information. I don't know if any of that made sense, but why don't I go ahead and jump on the computer and show you what this actually looks like in code and why I'm really excited to rewrite all this code and just make it so much better than the way it was before. So let's see. First, let me show you the way it was before. So here we have a section of code and it's all green because I commented it out so that I could have it temporarily be disabled. But yeah, look at all this. This is all just really, really messy. All of this was like collision detection stuff. I can't even remember what all these different parts were. So let's minimize that. And now we have everything inside of this section here called collisions 2. So this is everything. And this is like really messy because I'm like in the middle of working on it. Like all of this, I think that's just debug code I put in there so I can move the player around while I'm not in VR to test things out. So once I get things all figured out, I'll just go ahead and delete that. So that's all just temporary. And then here I can easily uncomment these individual lines of code. So all of this is how to move out of the walls. So basically there's like a whole bunch of code all inside of this, but we clear all of the collisions that we've gotten so far, and then we do a raycast inside out. So this is where it was like the inside out laser grenade of raycasts, and you can see I also have it, I had it commented out temporarily because I was just experimenting around. I also have it down here used for a different situation. But yeah, it just makes it so much easier to test out different sections of code and stuff. Probably everything in here I'll probably put inside of its own function, just like I have these ones here. So here, let me right click, go to definition, and then now down here I have all of that code, all actually like, so that one line of code, where was I? Oh, too far. There we go. So this one line of code here, I can use multiple times in different situations so that I don't need to have all of these giant chunks of code that all get messy. And yeah, it's just a whole lot cleaner now, but I still need to like work on it and try to get it working correctly. But yeah, why don't I go ahead and run the game and show you a little bit of how this all works. All right, so here we are, and right now we're just inside of the editor because I want to show off the inside out laser grenade of raycasts here. So let me kind of show you sort of what my life has been like for the past month or so. So every time I make a change, I found it easier to test out the basic changes inside of the editor like this so that I don't have to put on the headset every single time, because I just want to do some basic stuff and move around the player, just make sure that we collide with the ground correctly. Here, let me play around with these lasers so that you can see it a little bit better. So we go over here, raycasting, inside out, number of layers, so I can change how many layers we actually do. Let's see, what else? We can change how far above and below the body, so that if we want to raycast above the head just a little bit or below the feet just a little bit, we can adjust that number there. This is how many times around in a circle we go. And then let's see. Oh, this is how many times we raycast out from each point around the body. And then here's like the angle of how far, or like how far like up and down they go. So whoops, didn't mean to do that. So yeah, that looks really cool when you when you adjust that. All right, so here I am now in the game. So everything looks pretty normal and everything feels really normal right now as I'm standing on the ground. In fact, I think yeah, it's pretty good. That's always like a test that I like to do. Is just reach down, make sure when I touch the ground is lined up exactly the way it should be. Even when I stand on a slanted surface, yeah, that's working pretty good. And then also just standing on a surface and not like bouncing around as I'm moving down, that all works great. If I go up to a corner here like this, I think the camera's inside the wall. As you can see, as I move my head, it pushes me out of the wall, but it does it like a little too much. It jumps just a little bit too much, so that doesn't quite feel right. Um, and then I guess also when, oh, that doesn't feel good. When I'm like on the hoverboard, I keep, I don't know, vibrating out of the wall. That now I'm kind of stuck in the wall. There we go. So that's pretty weird. I gotta try to isolate the code and try different things and try to make that all feel right. At one point, it was pretty interesting. Going over a ledge like this, I would actually stick to the ledge. I seem to have fixed that glitch, but it gave me an idea of how to do grinding in the game. So I think I'm probably going to try to add that to the game once I get this all working, and that should be a lot easier once I get all of this code working correctly, because the code will be a lot cleaner and it'll be a lot easier to add new features. So here I am in like, oh, nope, that is broken. I was about to talk about how that seemed to be working good, but it's not. That was glitchy. Holy crap. Nope, that is glitchy as heck. Okay. At one point, that was working the way it should have been, but now it is not, and I don't know why. Um, so that was the thing. Like when corners are kind of like this and you're going inside of it, I thought I figured out a way of like really making it solid so you can't glitch and squeeze yourself in between two angles like that. Oh, that's another weird glitch. So as you can see, like when I hit the ground, most of the time it feels just right with that like leftover momentum thing that I was talking about. But then sometimes like that, you can see it like I get like stuck to the ground. And I think that's because of the leftover momentum and that is not working correctly. So I have all of these like tiny little adjustments to make. And also, moving platforms are like totally broken right now. I need to completely redo the whole moving platform system. So, yeah, all of this has just been like such a mess. So, it's to the point where I really need to just take a step back and I don't know, try to simplify things. I might be trying a little bit too hard and making things a little too complicated. Because, like, on one hand, things seem to be working really good, and, like, some of the new collision detection stuff is definitely more advanced and better than the way it was before, but also I've really messed up and introduced a lot of new glitches. So I don't know. It just needs a lot of work still. Hopefully it's going to be worth it when it's done though. So, yeah, it's been a really frustrating month. Like, on one hand, like in the first like 2 weeks of this last month, once I started working on this system, I was really, really enjoying it. Like, seriously, having a lot of fun. Like, crazy hard work. So, like, I started carrying around this notebook with me and drawing in it. And every time I come up with an idea, I'd like write it down. Like, once I thought of a new way of thinking about the geometry and the physics and stuff. And like all this stuff on the whiteboard, like it's really fun to push yourself to the limit. Like, I mean, it's hard work and like it just feels like my brain is just melting most of the time, but it really feels worth it once it all starts coming together. And I feel like I've created a really good foundation where I've created a lot of things that have been coming together. So, in that gameplay footage you just saw of me sliding around and stuff, all of that is all of the new physics system, all of the hitting walls, sliding up and down hills. I guess it just doesn't feel that exciting this time around because I've already done that before. But yeah, I've just done it again now with the new physics system, which is very similar to the old one, but just a lot cleaner. But except for the fact that I gotta fix all of these dang glitches. I don't know. So yeah, like I said, I really need to just take a step back, try to maybe just, not be so ambitious with figuring out every little perfect physical detail. But at the same time, like, stuff like that leftover momentum, like that's so close to working perfectly, and I really want to get that because I think that's going to feel good in the game. And moving out of walls, I guess I need to work on that just a little bit. Maybe I should find something that's like halfway in between the way it was working before and the way it's working now. Or who knows, maybe there's just like one little variable I can change because, I mean, I've done some tests and I'm pretty sure like it's possible, but something about the way I'm doing it like makes your character like vibrate and it does not feel good in VR. But I think it's going to be really awesome. And, you know, there's just so many more like features. Like one thing I'm really thinking I want to try to add is making it so your hands have physical properties as well. So you can push yourself off of walls, push yourself up on top of ledges. So now when you climb up to the very top of the ledge, you'll be able to put your hands and climb up. I mean, I haven't done that yet, but I'm thinking once I can get all of this code working, since my code is now so clean and modular, it won't be too hard to add features like that into the game. So I'm really, really looking forward to the future. So, but yeah, it's been super, super frustrating to try to get all of this working, and it feels like everything's falling apart. And I don't know, like for the past like week, I've been really down on myself. So one thing, just to try to clear my head a little bit, I think I need to start trying to work on two different things at the same time so that, you know, once I start feeling stuck on something, I can switch back to the other thing. Because, you know, I really have a lot of ideas of things I want to add, but I can't move forward until I get this physics system working because I have a bunch of ideas of what to do with that system once I do have it working. So, yeah, I don't know. It's been frustrating, but I'm really, really close. So, yeah, hopefully in the next few videos I'll have it all solved. We'll see. It's taken a lot longer than I expected. Hopefully, I don't know, hopefully it'll be better in the near future. So yeah, I guess I'll keep you updated, and until my next video, I'll see you later, and keep making games.